He was just a kid with big eyes and even bigger dreams. The kind of boy who'd sit alone under streetlights, sketching inventions on the back of old homework sheets while others were out laughing at him from a distance. They called him foolish. They said he'd never make it past the block. Just another black boy with wild ideas and no map to follow. But he kept dreaming anyway. In his small neighborhood where dreams were often crushed before they even had a chance to form, this boy, let's call him Malik, refused to give up. He didn't have money, fame, or connections. What he did have was imagination, grit, and a quiet fire burning in his chest. When teachers brushed him off, he studied harder. When classmates mocked him, he wrote down his thoughts in the corners of worn notebooks. When the world said, "You can't," he whispered to himself, "I will." People laughed the hardest when he said he wanted to build something that would help millions. "You," they chuckled. "You can't even fix your bike." But Malik saw what they didn't. He saw a future that didn't exist yet. A world where kids like him could dream loud, and no one would flinch. He saw possibility in places others had already given up on. As he got older, the laughter didn't stop, but it changed. It became quieter, more bitter, more fearful. Because slowly, Malik started turning those pages of scribbles into real prototypes. He began showing up at local science fairs, then city showcases. Some still ignored him, but others started noticing. His first invention was small. A homemade air purifier built from scrap parts that could help families breathe better in polluted neighborhoods like his own. It didn't make headlines, but it made a difference. And that was all the spark he needed. Still, for every step forward, something would knock him 2 steps back. Broken tools, stolen ideas, rejections from programs that claimed to support young innovators, but didn't see value in someone like him. There were nights he thought about quitting. Nights when he almost believed what they'd said about him years ago. But one moment would change everything. One idea. One final project. One showcase where the world would finally have to stop laughing and start listening. Because Malik wasn't done yet. And what he was about to reveal would not only shock the room but ripple across the globe. And it all started with a dream they tried to bury. Malik's story didn't begin in a fancy lab or at some elite school. It began in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a corner store, where the hum of traffic outside was louder than any bedtime story. His mom worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices by day and waiting tables by night. She never complained, but Malik could see the weight in her eyes. Still, every night, no matter how tired she was, she'd ask him what he was building next. "You're gonna do something big, baby," she'd say, pressing a kiss to his forehead. "Don't let them talk you small." School wasn't easy. Malik didn't talk much in class. He was the quiet kid in the back who rarely raised his hand but always had pages full of notes and questions. Teachers often mistook his silence for disinterest. Some even labeled him difficult. But what they didn't see was the storm of ideas inside his head, how he'd stay up late watching videos about engineering, learning how electricity flowed, how systems worked, how the world moved. It fascinated him. Not because he wanted money or fame, but because he believed he could fix things that were broken. Outside the classroom, things weren't much better. Some kids picked on him, calling him the professor or the robot kid. He didn't dress like them, didn't act like them. And he definitely didn't think like them. His mind was always somewhere else, somewhere ahead. But the worst part wasn't the teasing. It was how often people looked right through him, like he didn't matter. Like he was invisible. But Malik kept going. He built machines from old fans and radios he'd find in alley dumpsters. He taught himself to code using an old computer someone left behind at the community center. Every time something didn't work, he'd try again. He wasn't chasing perfection. He was chasing purpose. Then came the big opportunity. A statewide competition for young inventors. The kind of event with real judges, real investors, and real eyes watching. When Malik showed his idea to his guidance counselor, a solar-powered water purification system made from recycled materials, she hesitated. Not because it wasn't brilliant. It was. But because she feared what might happen if he went in and they didn't take him seriously. But Malik had heard that hesitation his whole life. So he just smiled and said, "They don't have to believe in me. I already do." He entered the contest alone. No fancy booth, no team in matching t-shirts, no sponsors. Just him, his invention, and a simple hand-painted sign, "Clean water for all." People walked past without stopping. Some whispered, some laughed. But one man didn't. He stood silently, watching, taking notes. And just like that, the tide began to shift. The man who stopped wasn't dressed like the others. No suit, no badge, no name tag swinging from a lanyard. Just jeans, a quiet expression, and eyes that studied Malik's invention like it mattered. He didn't ask a question right away. He just listened, really listened, as Malik explained how his system used sunlight to clean dirty water in low-income neighborhoods where bottled water was a luxury and boiling wasn't always an option. Malik spoke with clarity, not rehearsed confidence, but raw belief. The man nodded slowly and walked away without a word. Malik wasn't sure what to think. He'd been ignored so many times that even interest felt like a trick. But something about the way that man looked at the machine, not at Malik's clothes or skin, stayed with him. The day dragged on. Other booths drew crowds. Drones flying overhead, robots shooting basketballs, sleek prototypes with glossy posters and practice pitches. Malik's corner stayed quiet, a few curious looks here and there. But every time someone paused, he showed up, not with flash, but with purpose. His voice steady, his hands steady, his story honest. By evening, the judges came around. They smiled politely, nodded, scribbled notes. No one stayed more than a minute. Except one, a woman with a sharp gaze and a tired smile. She asked real questions. Challenging ones. What happens on cloudy days? What's the cost of scaling it? Can it run in areas with extreme humidity? Malik answered them all. He wasn't just dreaming anymore. He was ready. Still, after they left, silence returned. And in that silence, doubt crept in. That night, Malik sat alone on a park bench near the venue, his invention packed back into a borrowed wagon. He stared at the stars, wondering if maybe they were right all along. Maybe kids like him didn't get to change the world. Maybe this was as far as his dream would go. Behind him, someone chuckled nearby. "That the water kid? Bet he's already packing up." He didn't turn around. But what Malik didn't know was that the man in jeans had been watching all day. Not just him, but how people reacted to him. How many overlooked him. How many didn't see the value of what he was offering, not because it wasn't brilliant, but because it wasn't dressed in the usual success story costume. Meanwhile, back home, his mother waited, praying. Not just for him to win, but for the world to see him for who he really was. Across town, the woman judge flipped through her notes, circling his name again and again. Something about his project wouldn't let her sleep. And somewhere inside Malik, the fire still burned, faint but unshaken. He hadn't come this far to quit now. But something was coming. A choice. A test. And soon, the real fight would begin. The next morning, Malik showed up to the final round with tired eyes but a calm heart. He didn't know if he'd made the shortlist. No one had called. No one had emailed. But he still brought his prototype, still rolled it in with that same borrowed wagon. Maybe it was stubbornness. Maybe it was hope. Either way, he wasn't leaving without showing up for himself, one more time. Inside the auditorium, rows of chairs were filling fast. Judges at the front. Industry professionals in the back. A few reporters hovered along the sides, cameras already rolling. The top 5 finalists would be called up to present on stage in front of everyone: investors, press, mentors, and competitors. Malik stood quietly in the back, watching others prepare, their presentations loaded on sleek laptops, their teams rehearsing answers. One by one, the names were called. Not his. The 5th and final name echoed through the room like a stamp. Someone else. Polite clapping followed. Then silence. Malik didn't move. He just stood there, the edges of his dream beginning to fray. He'd done everything right. He worked harder than anyone. Still, it wasn't enough. Again. But then something happened. A quiet buzz rippled through the judges' table. The woman with the sharp gaze whispered something to the man beside her. He glanced toward the back of the room, right where Malik stood. The man in jeans was now seated at the far end, still watching. Then, a break in the program. A tech delay, someone said. And in that moment, everything shifted. One of the event coordinators came over to Malik, leaned in, and asked softly, "Do you still have your prototype?" Malik nodded, unsure what to think. "Good," she said. "You're going on next." He didn't understand. "But I wasn't." "You were added." No one explained why. No one asked if he was ready. Suddenly, he was being ushered toward the stage, past shocked finalists and confused judges. The crowd murmured, trying to figure out what was going on. Malik could feel his heart pounding, but his hands stayed steady as he wheeled his invention forward, step by step. On stage, under the bright lights, Malik looked out at a sea of faces. Some curious, some doubtful, some familiar. The laughter from his past echoed faintly in his mind, but he silenced it. This was it. The moment. He stepped to the mic, cleared his throat. And then, right before he spoke, the projector behind him flickered. Static. Another delay. The host whispered to stall. But Malik didn't need slides. Didn't need graphics. He looked up, met the crowd's gaze, and finally began to speak, not as a kid trying to prove something, but as someone who already knew his worth. And as his voice filled the auditorium, every eye turned to him. The room grew still. And the world began to listen. Malik's voice carried through the auditorium with a quiet strength that made people lean in. No fancy words, no rehearsed showmanship, just truth. He spoke about the places where tap water ran brown, where bottled water was too expensive, where children got sick just from drinking what should have been safe. He explained how his solar-powered purifier could change that, how it was cheap, portable, and built for the forgotten corners of the world. People started paying attention. Phones came out, recording. Judges leaned forward. Even the other finalists watched with something between surprise and unease. Malik wasn't supposed to be here, and yet, here he was, commanding the room like he belonged all along. But just as he was gaining momentum, the second twist struck. From the side of the stage, one of the event organizers stepped forward and whispered something urgently to the host. The host's face tightened. He interrupted Malik mid-sentence and asked him to pause. A moment later, a man in a corporate suit, one of the major sponsors of the competition, stood up in the crowd, holding a tablet in his hand. "There's a concern about originality," he said, loud enough for the mic to catch. "This design matches a concept our company reviewed last year. We need to verify this isn't a copy." Gasps rolled through the room. Malik froze. "What?" The man continued. "We've seen similar specs before. Until we check, we can't let this project move forward." It felt like the ground had cracked beneath him. Malik had never seen their files. He built his idea from scratch, his notebooks, his trial and error, his nights alone figuring things out. But the word, plagiarism, had already spread through the room like smoke. The judges looked conflicted. The woman with the sharp gaze raised her voice slightly. asking for a private review of the claim. The projector behind Malik flickered again, then shut off entirely. The lights dimmed. Chaos buzzed in whispers. He stood there, hands trembling now. Not from guilt, but from something worse, the fear that even when he did everything right, the world would still find a way to push him out. The man in the jeans rose slowly from his seat and disappeared backstage. The timer for the pitch kept ticking. Malik looked out at the crowd, his throat dry. Was this the end? Would his voice be silenced again, this time by a system too big to fight? Somewhere behind him, the host was arguing with the sponsor. But Malik, standing under the spotlight, faced the audience again. And with nothing but his voice and his belief, he said, "I didn't copy anything. This is mine. And I can prove it." But time was running out. And not everyone in that room wanted him to win. The room went quiet again. The host stood frozen, the sponsor's claim still hanging in the air like a dark cloud. Malik's fist clenched at his sides, but he didn't back down. Not this time. His voice cut through the tension like a wire under pressure. "You can check my design. You can check my notebooks. Every detail, every test result, every diagram, I've logged it all." The woman judge stood now, her arms folded, eyes locked on the sponsor. "Do you have that similar design with you?" she asked sharply. The man hesitated. "It's in our archives, not here on site." "Then you don't get to derail this presentation without proof," she snapped back. The audience shifted, some nodding, some murmuring. The balance of the room was changing. Just then, the projector blinked back to life. A single slide appeared behind Malik, a scanned image of a hand-drawn blueprint, his blueprint, from 2 years ago. It was his earliest design, signed and dated, taken from a community innovation blog he posted on when he was only 15. The blog had been forgotten by most, but not by the man in jeans. Because that man, now returning to the stage, wasn't just a silent observer. He was a lead engineer at a major clean tech firm and one of the secret judges in the audience. He walked up, holding a printed copy of Malik's blog post, and said into the mic, "This is the original. Dated. Authenticated. The sponsor's claim doesn't hold." A wave of stunned silence swept the auditorium. Then applause. The tension broke like a wave crashing. Malik didn't smile. Not yet. He stood still, overwhelmed, heart thudding. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But he stayed calm, grounded in that moment, because he knew this wasn't luck. It was the result of every sleepless night, every page in his notebook, every time he believed when no one else did. The host turned back to the judges, who huddled briefly before stepping forward. "This year's grand prize," the head judge announced, "goes to Malik James for his solar-powered water purification system built entirely from recycled components." The room erupted. As Malik stood there, blinking against the lights and noise, his mother rushed down the aisle, tears in her eyes, pride glowing on her face. He jumped from the stage and hugged her tight. But just before the celebration reached its peak, one of the tech assistants whispered something into the sponsor's ear. His face turned pale. Later that week, a report would surface that the sponsor's company had been sitting on a similar design for over a year, but never developed it. They hadn't been protecting an invention. They were trying to bury one. And now the whole world knew. Malik didn't just win a contest. He exposed the system and changed the future. The days after the competition felt like a blur. Malik's name spread like wildfire across news outlets, tech blogs, and social media. Headlines called him the boy who built clean water, and interviews started pouring in from around the world. People who had never heard of his neighborhood now knew his story. More importantly, they knew his solution: clean water powered by the sun, built from waste, designed by a black teenager who no one believed in until the truth was undeniable. The sponsor who tried to discredit him faced public backlash and legal scrutiny. Investigations revealed that they had indeed reviewed a similar idea years ago but shelved it, saying there was no demand in poor communities. But Malik proved the opposite, not just that there was demand, but that there was need. Urgent human need. His mother watched it all unfold with quiet pride. She still worked her 2 jobs, though people now recognized her on the street. "That's Malik's mom," they'd say, with warmth in their voices. And every time she heard it, she smiled a little deeper. Malik turned down several big contracts from companies who now claimed to support him. Instead, he partnered with a nonprofit focused on sustainable infrastructure. Together, they began installing his purification units in areas hit hardest by water crises: rural towns, refugee camps, underserved cities. What started as a dream in the back of a worn notebook was now saving lives. At school, everything changed. The same kids who laughed at him now asked him for help with their science projects. Teachers who once dismissed him used his journey as a lesson in resilience and innovation. He didn't hold grudges. He just kept building. One afternoon, he returned to that same community center where he first learned to code. He stood in front of a group of wide-eyed kids and told them what no one had told him enough growing up. "Your ideas matter. Your voice matters. Even if nobody listens right away, don't stop speaking." The story of Malik James became more than a win at a science fair. It became a symbol of something bigger, a reminder that innovation doesn't need permission, that greatness can come from the most overlooked places, and that the most powerful thing in the world is belief that refuses to break. They laughed at his dreams once. But now, the world drinks cleaner water because of them. And that's how a quiet boy with scrap parts and stubborn hope changed everything.